So, I'm sure we have all heard the Christmas story before. Maybe not the one where Mary and Joseph had to find where Bethlehem was on Google Maps. But, I'm sure we've heard the story itself hundreds and hundreds of times before. And it is often called the greatest story ever told. And I really love that because I think it is a pretty good story. We've got some amazing bits of angels. We've got some strange bits. Like, why would you bring gold and frankincense and myrrh to a baby? Like, it's a bit strange, isn't it? There's lots of different people going on. It's all happening. There's a bit of drama where Joseph is like, she cheated on me. Oh, my goodness. I'm going to divorce her. It's all going on in this story, right? And I think it is the greatest story ever told, okay? And one of the reasons that I believe it's such a great story is that you can hear it like I have. I was trying to work out a rough estimate of, like, how many times I might have heard that story over my 3 decades on this planet. And I was like, do you know what? I don't even know. Because between, like, listening and watching nativities like we've watched today, being part of nativities myself, writing nativities, editing the videos for nativities, when you listen to that story so many times, reading the story in the Bible myself, hearing the Bible readings like we've heard today in, like, carol services or Christingle services or whatever it might be, watching the Star Christmas movie. Who's ever seen the Star Christmas movie? I love it. Favorite movie. Watching all of those things, they all add up. And by the end of it, we've probably heard the story, I think, 30 years, like, I don't know how many times, a good couple of 100 times I'll have heard that story, won't I? And yet, just a couple of weeks ago, I'm teaching it in Kids Church upstairs, and I suddenly just felt like I'd found out something new from the story, and God was teaching me something new right there and then. So that's why I love it. You can hear it so many times, and you can still get something fresh and new, because it is the greatest story ever told. But another reason why I love the Christmas story is because I think it offers us the greatest invitation ever given. Okay? So let's just have a little think about who was invited to the stable, because so often I hear people's excuses of why they couldn't possibly come to church, of why they couldn't possibly be a Christian. It's because they're too bad. Helen, if you knew my history, you would know that I can't possibly be a Christian because Jesus wouldn't want me. Or maybe I'm just not quite sure that I believe in it all, so I can't possibly do it. And yet, if we look at the Christmas story, we can see that all those excuses don't really mean anything to God. Because when we look at the people that God invited into that stable, they were quite interesting people. Now, I don't know, give me a wave if you are a mum. Yeah? When you have had your newborn baby, who do you invite to come and see them first? Do you know what I mean? It's quite a special thing, isn't it? To be invited to see a newborn baby is quite an honour. It's quite a special thing. I'll tell you, I don't know about you, maybe you did let, like, the local farmers that you didn't even know come walking in, and some people from a far off land that you'd never met before. Maybe you did. I don't know. But for me, I invited people who were special, people who were really important in my life, people who I wanted to be really important in my children's lives. That's who I invited. And yet we look at the people who were in the stable, and they weren't who I would kind of invite into my birth space. Thankfully not a stable, that I've not given birth in a stable before, but there we go. Let's look at the shepherds to start with, okay? So the shepherds were people who didn't have the most glamorous of jobs in the world. They were hired, most likely hired, to look after people's sheep. It's not great. Probably was like minimum wage at best kind of job. A little bit grubby. You know, you're just out in a muddy field with smelly sheep all the time, day and night. It's not the best job. These people hadn't got all their qualifications from school. That's why they ended up in this job and not like something fancy like tax collector or something, right? They weren't that intelligent. They hadn't got all their qualifications. They had probably like a minimum wage job that was a little bit rough and ready and a little bit smelly, right? And yet Jesus said, God said, Jesus was a baby. He wasn't speaking yet. God said, I want you to come. Because God doesn't care about your qualifications. And he doesn't care about your paycheck at the end of the month. And he doesn't care about whether you've got a little bit of sheep poo on your clothes or not. He says, I want you. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this before, but the Bible doesn't say And these were good, God-fearing shepherds who never did anything wrong. And everybody loved them. It doesn't say it. They could have been good, God-fearing shepherds that never did anything wrong and everybody loved them. Or they could have been served a bit of time, done a bit of community service, well known to the Bethlehem coppers kind of people. It doesn't say. And do you know why I don't think it says in the Bible? Because it's not really relevant. Okay? God does want us to be good people. He doesn't want us to be getting in trouble with the law. He doesn't want us to be bullying people or all of that kind of thing. But actually, when he first calls us, when he first invites us, that's irrelevant. Okay? It's his perfection that is relevant. So he invites the shepherds. You could be thinking, those shepherds sound a little bit like me. Or maybe you're not. Let's have a see who else God invited. He invited the wise men. Sounding better already, right? We all like a wise man. Okay? So he invited the wise men. They were rich. Did you hear the gifts that they brought to that baby? Gold and fancy perfumes. They had a little bit of money. They weren't in your minimum wage kind of job. They had money to spend. Okay? So they were rich and they were wise. Or at least they were very intelligent. But do you know what they weren't? They weren't Jewish. So back then, Christianity didn't exist yet. Jesus was a Jew, Mary was a Jew, Joseph was a Jew, the donkey may have been a Jew as well. Everybody was Jewish. Okay? The wise men were not Jewish. They came from a different country. They had a different religion, which was all about the stars, like a bit astrology-esque religion. They weren't Jewish. If they were, then people as well-educated, as intelligent as they were, wouldn't have rocked up at Herod's house thinking that the baby was there. They would have known what the scriptures had said, that it was going to be in Bethlehem. Okay, so they wouldn't have got lost en route and ended up there. They didn't know because they didn't follow that religion. But God still chose them. So they were wise, they were rich, but actually they didn't believe in God. But that's irrelevant. Do you know what? They were wise, they were rich. It doesn't say again whether they were good or whether they were bad. Because being clever and having money doesn't equate to anything about morality. I think we all know clever, rich people who are not good people. Okay, so we don't know. They could have been lovely. They could have not been lovely. We don't know because it's irrelevant. They didn't even, at that point, really, truly know about God. They certainly couldn't quote you any verses of the Jewish scriptures at that time because they didn't know it. It didn't matter. They were still invited to the stable. So I've used quite a lot of words to describe the people that were invited. Poor, rich, not very qualified, very qualified, smelling of a bit of sheep poo, good people, bad people. We've hit most of the boxes, to be fair. The wise men brought perfume, so I'm sure they smelled good. Okay? So perhaps as I've said those things, you can think, I relate to at least one of those. We probably do, don't we? Relate to at least one of those. And so we can also know that God wants to invite somebody like me. That if we rocked up at that stable that night, we wouldn't be looked at and gone, I don't want you to come because of X, Y, Z. Because actually, X, Y, Z was all in the stable already. He invited everybody. And that is why I think that this story is the greatest story ever told. Because for somebody like me, who has grown up in church, who gave their life to God 24 years ago, who knows Bible verses and all of this, I am still not a perfect person. And so it's still humbling and it's still amazing. And I'm still so grateful that Jesus invites me to come to know him. And there's people who have never stepped foot in a church before, who maybe think they are the worst scum of the earth people and that everybody hates them, and yet Jesus still invites you to come to know him. Because he came to the earth to show his love, to bridge that gap between a perfect God and a messed up us. And he doesn't mind what we come with. Yes, he wants to transform our lives. Yes, he wants us to lead a great, purposeful life in line with what he's got planned. But he doesn't care what we come with to start with. And isn't that something worth being grateful for? And so, if you've come today, and perhaps you've still got those excuses lingering in your mind, perhaps nothing of what I've just said has quite quashed those excuses down. Maybe you're still thinking, I still don't think he'd invite me though, Helen. I still don't think he'd invite me. You don't know. Just quash him down. He will. He will invite you. And if you want to find out a little bit more about that, you can speak to any of the adults on stage today. You can try and speak to the kids, but you never know what they might say. You could speak to anybody in a big hello t-shirt. Come and just have a chat. We'd love to have a chat with you because we want you to come as you are. God wants you to come as you are. He invites us all. And so we're going to end with one last song, worshiping God, because can't we all be grateful for that invitation that he's given us? Aren't we all so grateful that he loves us? In all of his perfection, he came down to a not very perfect stable. Mind the shaving foam, guys, I'm sorry. To a not very perfect stable where everything was a bit gross. He invited people who were not perfect, who didn't tick all the boxes, because he loves us. And so everybody in here doesn't tick all the boxes. We certainly don't all smell like sheep poo, I'm very grateful to say. But do you know what? God still wants us. God's still inviting us. So let's stand up and let's sing our last song. And then after that, the cafe's going to open. We can have some more Christmas fun and make some gingerbread houses that aren't really gingerbread.